Our education plan for a stronger America sets high standards, and it demands accountability from parents, teachers, and schools. It provides for smaller class sizes, and it treats teachers like the professionals that they are. And it gives a tax credit to families for each and every year of college. When I was a prosecutor, I met young kids who were in trouble, abandoned, all of them, by adults. And as president, I am determined that we stop being a nation content to spend $50,000 a year to send a young person to prison for the rest of their life, when we could invest $10,000 a year in Head Start, Early Start, Smart Start, a real start to the lives of our children. And we value health care that's affordable and accessible for all Americans. Since 2000, 4 million people have lost their health insurance. Millions more are struggling to afford it. You know what's happening. Your premiums, your co-payments, your deductibles have all gone through the roof. Our health care plan for a stronger America cracks down on the waste and the greed and the abuse in our health care system, and it will save families $1,000 a year on premiums. You'll get to pick your own doctor, and patients and doctors, not insurance company bureaucrats, will make medical decisions. Under our health care plan, Medicare will negotiate lower drug prices for seniors, and all Americans will be able to buy less expensive prescription drugs from countries like Canada. The story of people struggling for health care is the story of so many Americans. But you know what? It's not the story of senators and members of Congress, because we give ourselves great health care, and you get the bill. Well, I'm here to say tonight, your family's health care is just as important as any politicians in Washington, D.C., and when I am president, we will stop being the only advanced nation in the world which fails to understand that health care is not a privilege for the wealthy and the connected and the elected. It is a right for all Americans, and we will make it so. We value an America that controls its own destiny, because it's finally and forever independent of Mideast oil. What does it mean for our economy and our national security when we have only 3% of the world's oil reserves, yet we rely on foreign countries for 53% of what we consume? I want an America that relies on its ingenuity and innovation, not the Saudi royal family. And our energy plan for a stronger America, our energy plan will invest in new technologies and alternative fuels and the cars of the future, so that no young American in uniform will ever be held hostage to our dependence on oil from the Middle East. I've told you about our plans for the economy, for education, for health care, for energy independence. I want you to know more about them. So now I'm going to say something that Franklin Roosevelt could never have said in his acceptance speech. Go to johnkerry.com. I want to address these next words directly to President George W. Bush. In the weeks ahead, let's be optimists, not just opponents. Let's build unity in the American family, not angry division. Let's honor this nation's diversity. Let's respect one another. And let's never misuse for political purposes the most precious document in American history, the Constitution of the United States. My friends, my friends, my friends, my friends, the high road may be harder. The high road may be harder, but it leads to a better place. And that's why Republicans and Democrats must make this election a contest of big ideas, not small-minded attacks. This is our time to reject the kind of politics calculated to divide race from race, region from region, group from group. Maybe some just see us divided into those red states and blue states, but I see us as one America, red, white, and blue. And when I am president, the government that I will lead will enlist people of talent, Republicans as well as Democrats, to find the common ground so that no one who has something to contribute to our nation will be left on the sidelines. And let me say it plainly, in that cause and in this campaign, we welcome people of faith. America is not us and them. I think of what Ron Reagan said of his father a few weeks ago, and I want to say this to you tonight. I don't wear my religion on my sleeve, but faith has given me values and hope to live by from Vietnam to this day, from Sunday to Sunday. I don't want to claim that God is on our side. As Abraham Lincoln told us, I want to pray humbly that we are on God's side. And whatever whatever our faith, one belief should bind us all. The measure of our character is our willingness to give of ourselves for others and for our country. These aren't Democratic values. These aren't Republican values. They're American values. We believe in them. They're who we are. And if we honor them, if we believe in ourselves, we can build an America that is stronger at home and respected in the world. So much promise stretches before us. Americans have always reached for the impossible, looked to the next horizon and asked, what if? Two young bicycle mechanics from Dayton asked, what if this airplane could take off at Kitty Hawk? It did that, and it changed the world forever. A young president asked, what if we could go to the moon in 10 years? And now we're exploring the stars and the solar system themselves. A young generation of entrepreneurs asked, what if we could take all the information in a library and put it on a chip the size of a fingernail? We did that, and that too changed the world. And now it's our time to ask, what if? What if we find a breakthrough to Parkinson's, diabetes, Alzheimer's, and AIDS? What if we have a president? What if we have a president who believes in science so we can unleash the wonders of discovery like stem cell research and treat illness for millions of lives? What if we do what adults should do and make sure that all of our children are safe in the afternoons after school? What if we have a leadership that's as good as the American dream so that bigotry and hatred never again steal the hope or future of any American? I learned a lot about these values on that gunboat, patrolling the Mekong Delta with Americans. You saw them, who come from places as different as Iowa and Oregon, Arkansas, Florida, California. No one cared where we went to school. No one cared about our race or our backgrounds. We were literally all in the same boat. We looked out one for the other, and we still do. That is the kind of America that I will lead as president, an America where we are all in the same boat. Never has there been a moment more urgent for Americans to step up and define ourselves. I will work my heart out, but my fellow citizens, the outcome is in your hands more than mine. It is time to reach for the next dream. It is time to look to the next horizon. For America, the hope is there, the sun is rising. Our best days are still to come. Thank you, good night, God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
John Kerry, working himself literally into a sweat, or as my high school English teacher would refer, into a high state of perspiration. Then almost literal thunder inside the hall, shaking the Fleet Center in a way that it seldom shakes, if ever, even during a Celtics basketball playoff game or a Bruins hockey playoff game. These Democrats, as the speech built, having what amounted to maybe a 3,000 calorie attack about every 2 or 3 minutes, united in a way the Democratic Party has not been for about a half a century. John Edwards says something to the top of the ticket area. Bob Schieffer?
Well, I'll tell you, Dan, this is the best speech I have ever heard John Kerry make. I listened to a lot of speeches back during the primary. This was the best. This was a very deft critique of policy. But underlying that critique of policy was a message about trust. And what John Kerry seemed to be saying tonight, frankly, was you can't trust these people and you can trust me. I think that was the message here tonight. It was very personal on several fronts, it seems to me, like when he said, you know, we can no longer be dependent on overseas oil. He didn't say Mideast oil. He said Saudi royal family oil. That's a clear jab at President Bush and allegations that his father has been very close to the Saudis.
The direct quote was, I want an America that relies on its own ingenuity and innovation, pause, not the Saudi royal family. In a night in which there was rolling thunder of applause, that may have been the biggest of a number of big applause lines.
Another point, he says, I don't wear my religion on my sleeve. That, again, I think was a jab at this current president who has, made a great deal about his own faith. John Kerry said he is a man of faith, but saying it in the way he did, I think, again, was a direct reference to President Bush.
And again, he quoted Lincoln, the quote, I don't want to claim God is on our side. I want to pray that we are on God's side, unquote. We go to the podium and CBS News Chief White House Correspondent John Roberts. John?
Dan, before the speech tonight, I talked to a number of Democrats. I said, in one word, what is it that John Kerry needs to do tonight? And I heard anything from he needs to display strength, he needs to exude confidence, he needs to connect with people at home. That last, he obviously showed strength. He obviously showed confidence. As to whether or not he connected, it's difficult to tell in this room, even when you're watching it on a small television screen, because that's a very personal thing. And those undecided voters at home have to decide whether or not he came through the television screen in a way that Bill Clinton is famous for, and still, I think, in the minds of many of these delegates, gave the speech of this convention. Did he connect with voters? That's the key question, and that's the key question that will determine whether or not he wins over a lot of those undecided voters. To the question of, were some of these things aimed at President Bush? I talked to somebody involved with the speech writing a little earlier on tonight. There were several elements of the speech that were in there that were designed to counter things or turn around things that President Bush has said both in his campaign and in his time in the White House. Back in the year 2000 campaign, President Bush always said help is on the way. John Kerry is saying now, well, help might have been on the way, and a promise it never came. Now help is on the way. And he also turned around that phrase that President Bush used in 2000 where he said he was going to restore honor and dignity to the White House. John Kerry tonight saying he would restore trust and credibility in the White House. So every chance he could tonight, co-opting themes of President Bush or turning around phrases that President Bush has issued before. A little more of an attack that we thought we'd see from John Kerry, particularly given the optimistic and, as one critic put it, namby-pamby tone of many of these speeches, and that they were so non-negative. Dan?
John Roberts, well, the balloon drop, which will eventually involve almost 100,000 balloons. I am not making this up, folks. You know, at each convention, there's a kind of can you top this balloon drop? Here's the Democrats' bid. Almost 100,000 balloons will be dropped from the ceiling here before the evening is over. We go to the floor under the balloon drop. CBS News correspondent Byron Pitts. Byron?
John Kerry and his family. It is also bittersweet. It was 4 years ago during the Democratic convention, not far from where we stand tonight, that John Kerry stood near his father on his deathbed. Earlier, as the family was preparing to leave John Kerry's home here in Boston, I'm told he whispered to his sister, remember the words of her mother on her deathbed when she said, John, knowing he would run for president someday, remember, John, integrity, that's what matters. Tonight, John Kerry tried to show that integrity. Dan?
Byron Pitts on the floor. Bob Schieffer, it's difficult, bordering on impossible, not to get caught up in the moment. When you have this scene at an American political convention, yes, they've been to many in terms of importance, but on the climactic night, the fourth evening, the acceptance speech by the candidate, it is as colorful as a Verdi opera and an unforgettable moment. However, it's worth keeping in mind that rarely, if ever, has a presidential election been decided by any candidate's acceptance speech.
Well, that's probably right, but I think it's fair to say John Kerry certainly didn't hurt himself in this hall with these Democrats tonight. This was a rousing political speech, Dan, and I think he did introduce himself in a way to the American people that they have not yet seen him. I've never seen him give a speech in the way that he gave this speech tonight. He spoke more quickly than he normally does, and I think it really added to the effectiveness of his presentation tonight. This was a speech where John Kerry was trying to make a hard sell, and it is a hard argument to make. He is saying the country will be safer if you change the commander-in-chief in the middle of this battle on terrorism. That's what this is going to be about from here until Election Day, Dan.
Bob, I'm recalling that the morning that John Kerry announced John Edwards as his vice presidential running mate in Pittsburgh, by almost acclamation, it was judged to be one of the worst political speeches that any candidate had made in recent memory. And to see the energy, the focus, and yes, the excellent delivery tonight compared with that morning in Pittsburgh is pretty impressive, pretty remarkable. And the question is that over the length and breadth of the campaign, And in the words of that old Irish song, it's a long way to Tipperary, but just to say there's a still long, hard road to slog. Can John Kerry consistently meet the standard that he set for himself tonight, or does he lapse back into what we saw and heard that morning in Pittsburgh?
Well, and the other part of that, Dan, I think you make a very good point. The other part of it, Republicans are not just going to sit there and watch all this happen. They're going to have a few things of their own to say. They're going to challenge a lot of what he said tonight. They're going to question, where do you get the money to do some of the things he's going to do? They're going to question, okay, so you say you're going to do this. How are you going to do it? So,
and how are you going to pay for it?
And how are you going to pay for it? So we got a long way to go before this election is over. But I think he has done about as well as he could do to frame it and set the stage for what's ahead.
John Roberts up on the podium. A decision was made at some point in the Kerry camp fairly recently to go into the convention and stick in the convention, accentuating the positive. Now, we all know that over the last 40 to 50 years, it's been an axiom of American politics. People say they don't want negative campaigning. They don't want the campaign to get nasty, but frequently, one would say most often, the most negative campaign wins. Can you give us any insight to what they may be thinking in the White House in that context?
Well, Dan, the Democrats obviously were working off of some research that said America wanted an optimistic presentation here at this convention, and that negativism may not get them exactly what they wanted. I think a lot of it, Dan, was a response to some of what was coming out of the White House. Don't forget, for the last few weeks, President Bush and the Bush-Cheney campaign have been presenting John Kerry and John Edwards as the party of negativism, the party of pessimism. All they have are bad things to say. And there might have been something in what we saw this week to try to counter that definition that the Bush-Cheney people have tried to put on this campaign. They didn't want to be the candidates of pessimism. They wanted to offer an optimistic view. But in the type of speeches that we've seen this week, which may play well with some undecided voters, there's also been a buzz in the Democratic Party that they should have gone after attacks that were a little more slashing than they did against President Bush, feeling that there were a lot of opportunities to exploit openings that they didn't, Dan.
John Roberts on the podium. Well, we have heard a lot this week about how tonight John Kerry would have to deliver the speech of his life. And about a quarter of the way in this evening, when making the case as he sees it that his Democratic Party is an optimistic party, the party of hope and help on the way, John Kerry seemed to hit his stride and just may have cleared the high bar that has been set for him. And so this 44th Democratic National Convention is history. John Kerry took a high-stakes gamble tonight, deciding to highlight the war on terror and America's national security, trying to make the argument he can be and will be a better commander-in-chief than George Bush. You may want to consider this. 4 years ago, terrorism and national security were barely mentioned by either presidential candidate in his acceptance speech. Candidates Bush and Gore focused much more on economic security, the traditional pocketbook issues, believing people in the end vote their pocketbooks. Tonight, candidate Kerry said flat out, we are a nation at war. The risk he takes by making that war a make-or-break issue is that Americans historically have been reluctant to change the commander-in-chief in the middle of a war. Although John Kerry remembers in Vietnam, in effect, America did change its commander-in-chief in the middle of that war. So now, if Kerry is to succeed, he must convince American voters that this time, once again, they can and must make that change, that America would be safer if he were president and commander-in-chief. 5 weeks from tonight, when President Bush addresses the nation from the Republican National Convention, he will try to persuade voters to stay the course and stay with him. On November 2nd, voters will make their choice. There'll be much more about the Democratic Convention on your local news on this CBS station, tomorrow morning on the CBS Early Show, tomorrow night on the CBS Evening News, and 24 hours a day on CBSNews.com. For our CBS News Convention team, Dan Rather reporting from Boston. Good night, everybody.
How did you define him before tonight? How do you define him now?
I thought he was an unknown candidate, at least to me, and after listening to what he said today, I thought that, hey,